Is Siege still failing in some major fundamental areas? Hey, what's up guys, IrishTale here, and in today's video, I want to try and talk to you guys about some things that I think Siege and Ubisoft are still failing at with regards to Rainbow Six Siege in the way that certain things are implemented. Now, a lot of this comes from a stream that I did the other day. If you guys haven't seen that, I haven't posted it live, but basically, during that stream, we came across one player who was guaranteedly hacking and cheating for his team, and the second thing we encountered was a player who basically decided to start trying to throw the match for us and cost us the game. Now, after these two incidents, I sat there and I said to the chat, I was talking to the chat and I was saying things like, I don't agree with this isn't right, how is it that Ubisoft have had this game out for such a long period of time, but these are such major issues. And basically, these are areas that I think Ubisoft is failing at on a fundamental level. I think they've had this game out for nearly 2 years now, and they've still not fixed some of the major priority areas that a competitive shooter, should have fairly well fixed at this point. So first of all, let's talk about hacking. Now, generally speaking, this isn't a major problem, but there are still some really bad points to it. During this game with this hacker, basically what was going on is he was getting kills that he shouldn't have been getting. He was very obviously hacking, and he was well aware of what he was doing. Obviously, he was bullshitting in chat saying he wasn't, but the end of the story was he was. He was cheating, and he was carrying his team for the win. Now, what made it worse was that while he was doing this, his teammates were well aware of what he was doing. It was very obvious they knew he was hacking, and they just allowed him to carry them. Now, because of this, that meant they were doing things like recruit strategies. In rank, they were just running out with shotguns because they knew this guy was going to get the kills for them, regardless of what was going to happen. Now, because of this, basically the experience for my team and my friends playing myself was a completely ruined game. We sort of sat there like 2 rounds in and we're like, well, there's no point trying to win this. We're just going to, piss about a little bit because this guy is obviously hacking. And again, the issue here is that Ubisoft haven't implemented a system in Siege to deter teammates from having hackers on their team. Now, what I think they need to do is something like CSGO. CSGO is played where if you have a hacker on your team, the MMR from that game doesn't count. You're set back as if that game was basically a loss. You're put down, and the reason for that is because you haven't kicked the person who's cheating. You're aware he's cheating and you haven't done it, and basically, or in some cases they just they don't give you any MMR for it, and they just put you back to where you would have been had you not played the game at all. And the people who were beaten by this game are given that MMR back because, again, it's a game that they essentially couldn't win because they're being cheated. Now, Overwatch does a similar system here, where they'll cancel out games for doing that, but Siege doesn't do this. They ignore this system. For some reason, they just ignore it, and it's like, oh, there's a hacker, we'll ban them outright, but there's nothing else we can do for anyone else that was playing. And that, to me, is one of these fundamental errors that Ubisoft are already making. They need to fix this system. One, they need to make us feel like they're actually dealing with hackers, because quite frankly, it's very rare that I've ever seen a report case get an actual response. I don't think I've ever seen someone reported actually get banned. And it was disgusting. Like, you guys might be thinking, oh, this guy wasn't probably hacking. I'm sorry, but he was. And he was avoiding this system as well, because right before the end of the match, literally when they were about to win, he left the game. So that way, he gets a recorded loss, but his friends get a recorded win. Now, that to me is such a broken system that he can just avoid getting detected as much because of this. And I think Ubisoft really need to step up their game with regards to people cheating and how they deal with it. And now let's move on to the second issue. Now, this is the player that was basically throwing the game. Now, in my opinion, obviously, Siege is a very competitive game. You have people that play ranked that actually want to really rank up, and then you have the people that will play who don't really care, and they'll just start trolling. Now, the issue here is, again, there is no way to deal with players like this. You can't report them for it because it's suspicious behaviour. There is no detailed report system. And again, this is where I think Ubisoft and Siege are failing quite heavily. I think they need to turn around, look at this system, especially now, during Operation Health, and actually try and implement a better system. Because currently, what they have is a failing system, 100%. They are not implementing it how they should be implementing it. Now, if we take a look at another competitive shooter that is newer than Siege, being Overwatch, you can see that their report system is very much a lot more streamlined now after they've realised they had certain issues they needed to deal with. So if we take a look at Overwatch's report system, they have bad battle tag, inactivity, poor teamwork, abusive chat, griefing, spam, and cheating. Now basically they have a different thing depending on how a person is playing and how they are affecting your game. So let's say for example in Siege they implemented a similar system. You would obviously have report them for their Uplay name because it's offensive. Inactivity, the person just keeps going AFK. Poor teamwork means things like, they're not picking operators, they're just being a dickhead shooting off your gadgets, things like that, which you could also put under griefing, I suppose, as well. Abusive chat, the players being abusive in chat. Those sorts of things. Basically what I'm saying is I think Ubisoft need to look at their report system and improve it, because currently it is really unfleshed out, and to me it almost seems like they don't care. Siege has regularly been described to me as one of the most toxic communities in, current gaming. Yes, you have your Counter-Strike communities, you have your Dota communities who are quite toxic, but Siege is building toxicity. The amount of times you'll find a game where someone is being toxic or they're doing something abusive is ridiculous. It happens more often than I ever thought it would do in such a competitive shooter. And the issue is, it's going the way of Call of Duty, and I think Ubisoft need to turn around and say, look, we realise there's a problem, we're trying to deal with shit right now in Operation Health, so I think, we should try and implement a system similar to what Overwatch have. It wouldn't be too difficult for them, and, it would mean that we would have a little bit more security in saying, yes, you're actually looking at these problems, because currently it feels like they're not. Again, another thing you get is, it's this thing of you don't feel as though your reports actually have any impact. When it comes to Overwatch, generally speaking, you know for a fact that somebody is checking those reports, because regularly they do massive ban waves, they do these sorts of things, and you'll see players not turn up in your competitive bracket. Whereas with Siege, when you report somebody, you see them again 2 weeks later, even though there's been, supposedly they've checked out the player, but they've gotten away with this behaviour. They've been allowed to do these sorts of things, and Ubisoft have just gone, we're not really bothered, we're not really checking it. And again, I think it's this case of Ubisoft aren't necessarily employing enough people, maybe, to look at these report cases. And just generally speaking, it's not good. It doesn't feel like they care enough about making their community good, rather than just making their game work. And, there are still issues with the game, don't get me wrong, they do need fixing, but I also feel as though they need to start looking at the community and start fixing it, because the amount of times that players come to me and they say, I was just starting to play the game and people were team killing me, they were trying to kick me out because I was a low level player. These are the sorts of things that Ubisoft need to go, right, we know this is a problem, and we're going to start and we're going to look at it and we're going to deal with it, because currently they're not. And I'm worried for this community, because generally speaking, we've been told regularly, Siege is growing as a community. It's only getting bigger. The issue is that some of the players in this community are not good for it, and they turn people away very, very quickly, because they give them this shitty experience where they aren't treated like actual people, like actual players, and they're abused. And I really think that Ubisoft need to, literally go, what I think it should be is, I think, with their new rollback system that they've implemented supposedly, I think they should just roll out a very new report system, and they say, we are going to man this, we are going to make sure that when a report comes through, it takes us maybe, let's say a working week, to, look at a report and make sure it is checked out. And that to me is something I think they should start doing, and they should announce that they're doing, because, quite frankly, it is my biggest pet peeve. I have to say, recently, I have been turned off of Siege so much because of these players who cheat and get away with it. These players who are abusive to their own teammates and get away with it. I don't think that, these sorts of things should be allowed. If a player starts throwing on your team, Ubisoft should be like, right, that player is gone. He's ruining the game for his teammates. He should not be allowed to stay. And I'm sorry, but that is the case. I don't think Ubisoft should be ignoring that. I don't think they should just let it go. I think that should be a hard stance, and they should remove these players, because it's toxic behaviour, which they've said they will ban for, even though we haven't seen it. And I don't understand how this is still a problem at such a late stage in the game. The community should have been the #1 priority, and it wasn't. And I don't understand why it still isn't. It's one of those things that are making me worry that Siege is going to start taking a bad turn very soon, and we're going to see a large drop-off in players. You have to think, a lot of players weren't happy with Operation Health when it first came in. It very much divided the community and split people up between people who thought, well, I don't really give a shit, you know, I wanted the new operators, they've done Operation Health, I'm just angry. And those kind of players, a lot of those people are taking their frustrations out on other players. They're treating them like shit, they're cheating because they no longer care, and these players have gotten worse. And then you had the players that said, okay, Operation Health is a good thing. But the issue is they're now being abused by a lot of the people who aren't happy. And we now get this issue where Ubisoft need to stand up and say, we are going to take a hard stance. We're going to look at the system and we're going to improve it. Because currently it's in a bad state. It's very poorly optimized. There are very few ways to deal with this sort of thing. And, you know, I have spoken about this before in other videos, and I'm guaranteeing a few people will say that. But generally, I think they need to improve it. And that's my opinion. I think they should look at Overwatch's report system, bring in something like that, and then actually tell us they're manning it, or even they're hiring staff to man it. Because I'm just disappointed with it currently, and it's really starting to make me not want to play Siege as much. Because I know when I play, I'm not going to get a good game. Similarly, I think they need to do something for, like, communication. They need to start making something for players to want to communicate. Because another thing that really does my head in is when players are playing Siege and they're playing Siege in a Discord with their mates. Now, if you're playing in a Discord, that's perfectly fine, but I still think they should be using their in-game microphones. The amount of times that I have come across players who don't give call-outs over a microphone, but then flame in chat because you're not doing something that they want you to do, is unreal. Again, on a stream, I was playing with a group of players, and they were like, oh, we're in Discord. And I was like, okay, fair enough, but can you still give calls via the game? Because I'm not in your Discord, I can't hear what you're saying. And they literally went, okay, we'll try, and then didn't speak again for the entire game. Now that to me is not a good thing. It's meant to be a communicative game, but I think Ubisoft need to start prioritizing people and saying, okay, if you communicate, you know, you'll get something out of it, or you'll get some sort of benefit. Maybe what it could be is a rating system at the end of a game. Maybe it would be a case of, at the end of the game, I can rate a teammate and say, this player was very communicative. This player spoke to me on a regular basis and gave me information. Or I can say, this player did not communicate at all. He did not speak to me and gave me no call-outs. And that way, I think Ubisoft could then start dividing their player pool into players that speak and players that don't speak. And players that speak get prioritised to play with other players with microphones. Again, it's one of those small little changes they could make to improve their game to a degree that would be so much better. Because it happens so often that you get players that don't speak, that again, it starts to ruin the game for other people. But, you know, that's my opinion, guys. That's my little rant video over. Those are the things that I think Ubisoft needs to work on, because they are definitely areas that they are still heavily failing at. But now I'm going to throw the question out to you guys. What do you guys think to Siege currently? Do you think they need a better report system? Do you think they need a better anti-cheat system? And do you think they need a better way to improve people's communication? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on any of the topics I've discussed. And of course, feel free to share your own thoughts in the comments below. Give me your own opinions on how they could fix it, how they could improve it. As always, I'm going to be reading the comments. I reply to most of them if I find them interesting enough. And, you know, I do always read the comments, guys. I am always there reading your comments, so feel free to post them. Obviously, you know, if you like the video, feel free to hit that like button. It does help the video out. It does help it get more views. And I think the idea here is I'm actually going to try and share this on both the Ubisoft forums and the Ubisoft Rainbow Six Siege Reddit. We'll try and get a little bit more exposure, see what the community actually thinks about this, and hopefully try and get the eyes of Ubisoft at least a little bit more open to some of the problems that we as a community are experiencing. But other than that, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.